At some point in time, one of us noticed what we thought was a canoe coming down the river, and we just sort of assumed that maybe it was a hunter with a lantern or just some people out fishing at night. And eventually these lights just entered this clearing, and there was no canoe, there were no hunters, it was just these balls of light about the size of baseballs. We didn't quite know what to make of it, so we started sort of shouting out the colors to make sure we were seeing the same thing, and we were. They were changing different colors, blues and reds and oranges. At some point in time, the lights just kind of started spinning around, skimming off the water. They seemed to be sentient, they seemed to be playing, they seemed almost as if they wanted us to see them. And then after a few minutes, they grew fainter and fainter and went back upstream from the direction they originated from. To this day, I don't have an explanation for it. I just sort of appreciate the fact that I was able to experience it.
Paranormal activity has been reported throughout the entire 200-square-mile region of the Bridgewater Triangle. Most often, it is reports of unidentified flying objects, or UFOs, that top the list of the unexplained.
The 1970s in particular were a time of very high UFO activity in the Bridgewater Triangle. There were sightings along Route 44, in Raynham, in Taunton, very, very often.
In the spring of 1979, former WHDH reporters Jerry Lopes and Steve Sprazia claim to have witnessed what is arguably the most famous UFO sighting to occur within the Bridgewater Triangle.
Jerry Lopes and I worked at WHDH Radio, and we were heading down to the Raynham dog track, and when we got off 24 onto 106, I noticed this really bright light over the tree line, and the light was coming closer and closer and getting bigger and bigger. And I remember saying to Jerry, "What is that over there?" So we pulled his vehicle over, and all of a sudden the stars blotted out in the shape of an arrow as this thing passed overhead.
Ironically, I'm a big baseball fan, it looked like a baseball home plate, and there were a series of lights on it.
And it was very, very wide. Perhaps the width of now, we'd say 5 747s wing to wing.
It looked like it had a little cord or something hanging off it, and sparks were coming off of it. I almost felt like I could throw a rock at the thing. It seemed that close to me.
This was pretty much the shape of it. And this thing passed overhead like this. For me, what first attracted me was this light that kind of came into our field of vision, just like that. And as this thing passed overhead, it just kept coming and coming and coming. And the light kept getting bigger and bigger.
I'm an Air Force veteran. I've been in the Air Force for 4.5 years. I've been around a number of different planes, and I said to Steve, that's not one of ours. And it just hovered there for a minute. It looked like it was over a little bit of a field, and the next thing you know, it just kind of just took off.
We continued on to the dog track, and most of the conversation that evening was, what did we see? Up to that point, I had been 100% skeptic. I thought anybody who ever saw these things, they were either crazy or publicity hounds, or there was just something wrong with them in their head altogether. What I didn't realize at the time was that a lot more people had seen it than just Jerry and I.
Interestingly, over the course of the next week, there were a series of spottings, different sightings. It was reported in the papers, reported on the radio station, and at that point, Steve and I decided to come forward and say, hey, we actually saw something.
A couple of days later, an article appears in the Brockton Enterprise. And not only does it have interviews with Jerry and I, but quite a number of other folks in and around the Randolph area who had seen it. But they've got the staff artists take all of our recollections and put together a drawing, an artist's rendition, which looked pretty much like this. And it's like, whoa. I keep looking up because even to this day, as I look up, I can imagine I can see the darn thing. It made that much of an impression on me.
I saw what I saw, I reported what I saw, and I moved on.
And there was another witness, too, 17-year-old Ron Baker. Now, 36 years later, he recounts his experience. The craft shared a number of physical characteristics with the UFO reported by Jerry Lopes and Steve Sprazia.
At the time, I was working at the steakhouse on 138 in Southeastern. It was an early night, about 8:30, 9 o'clock. Pulled out to the parking lot, and I saw in the sky this big dark shadow, wedge shape or triangle shape, and it was moving very, very slow.